I was taught to do what's called ghost ads. And what ghost, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with those. What ghost ads are, I put on Craigslist that I have a house for sale, and I put a price there, but I don't have that house. I'm just soliciting buyers. And that didn't sit well with me because, I mean, that's fraud again. I mean,
it's false advertising. And who told you to do that?
Well, that was one of our mentor in Tom Krol's program. So Tom Krol.
Bad boys, yeah. You thought that was bad. You're in for a real treat today. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This is obviously a topic many of you are interested in because we have never once had any podcast episode go as viral as quickly as the one that we published yesterday about this very same topic. So a couple things I want to go ahead and address real quick before we get into this. First and foremost, this is not an attempt or effort to tear anyone down. It's been intimated in a couple of comments on social media that that's the case, and it absolutely is not the case. The issue here is that fraud is being taught. People are out there committing fraud and doing things illegally under the pretense that because they paid for a course, they are insulated from what it is that they're doing because they have been enamored by some online personality. So they think that because of that and because there are other people that are doing the exact same thing, that what they're doing is legal, when in fact it isn't. And I'm going to show you and demonstrate here real quick why it's so important to understand what it is that you're doing. So as an example, one of Tom's students is a guy by the name of Cody. I got sent one of his blab videos that they did where Cody comes on and memorializes. And if you guys don't understand what memorializes means, if you ever get pulled into court, and whether you're being sued civilly or you're being prosecuted criminally, and they bring in any type of documentation, whether it's written, video, audio, etc., it's called memorialization. So if you put something in email or in Facebook that is then being utilized as evidence against you, it's called memorialization in writing. If you do it, it's even worse because context in writing can, you can be making a joke that can be taken out of context. And so there's some sort of gray area when you do it in writing. However, when you're confirming in video and audio that you're breaking the law and committing fraud, it's a little more challenging to try to suggest that you didn't mean what you said. And so where I get a little perturbed at some of the things that are happening here, and I watch what's being taught to people and what they're doing, and then the fact that they're going on and they're doing these rah-rah, rallies and tribe meetings and whatever they're called, where they go on and then memorialize in their own image and their own video, their own audio, that they've committed fraud, they've false advertised, they've committed bait and switch, they've induced sellers to engage in contracts with fraudulent intent where what they were trying to do is not disclosed up front, where they're then going to put in nonsense weasel clauses and things like that in an effort to get out of a contract in the event that they're unsuccessful in finding an assignee. And that's what most of these are doing. And you'll hear the exact same, everything I'm telling you, you're going to hear being taught by Tom Krol by his number one student here in just a few minutes. But when they do that, and you're a guy like Cody, who seems like he's a really nice guy, I think he's out in Utah or Idaho or somewhere, and you have a livelihood that you're trying to protect and a family. And he also, last time I saw it, had an insurance brokerage. And so what happens then, he's a licensed individual, and now you're admitting that you're engaging in illegally brokering without a license, you're false advertising, you're committing bait and switch, you're fraudulently engaging in contracts and admitting all this stuff. The trickle effect of that is that when this thing finally comes down, and it's going to, I'm telling you guys right now, it's going to. It's no different than, you'll even hear me say this in this conversation with Theo, it's no different than predatory lending back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where guys were charging 12, 13, 14, well, I guess it was 13 points, Regulation Z, all that stuff that was going on back in the day. And all the states, North Carolina started it. They started coming out with what are called predatory lending laws, and basically the greed and fraud perpetrated by lenders in the mortgage industry caused absolute chaos and killed the golden goose because of a few bad apples. And that's exactly what's going on here with people that are out there committing fraud on a daily basis. And it only takes one upset person, one upset seller who thinks you ripped him off, one upset assignee, some guy that you sold or assigned the property to or sold it to, and all of a sudden this whole thing unravels. But they're not going to tell you that. Okay, they're not going to tell you any of this stuff when it comes to these courses where they're pitching and showing this stuff. They're not going to let you know what the repercussions are going to be and where do you think they're going to be when all this comes down. That's where, a lot of these guys are in very precarious positions because they do memorialize in writing and video and audio exactly what it is that they're teaching. And as we get into what the definition of racketeering is, whether they engage in the activity or not, if they go out there and they, especially when they're charging money for it, suggest that you go out there and commit false advertising, bait and switch, fraud, etc., like you're about to hear, they've engaged in racketeering. Okay, now racketeering can be both civil and criminal. Okay, it's two different things that you can be charged with when it comes to racketeering. States have a tendency to like to go after criminal activities. So you get involved in something like that, and you're out there engaging in these activities. And a lot of people, here's the problem. And this is where my disgust with the entire industry comes in. A lot of people that are out there, especially ones that have taken these courses and have made money, they genuinely don't care. They really don't have any issue with false advertising. They don't have any issue with lying to sellers. They don't have any issue with lying to buyers. They don't have any issue with the fraud that they're committing on a daily basis as long as that paycheck keeps coming in. Couldn't care less. And if that's who you are, this podcast is not for you. If, on the other hand, you want to understand how to do things right, correctly, legally, and not have to lie, cheat, and steal, because you don't have to, then maybe this might be something that you want to take a listen to. So at any rate, when you get into this situation where these guys are memorializing all this stuff in video and audio, all you're doing, and I'm going to tell you to all these guys that go out there in these blab videos and they admit to the fraud they're committing, whether they think it's fraud or not, you better look into it because it is. Okay. And they start dissecting the contracts and everything that you did and whether or not you had the physical ability to close on a property when you were out there advertising that you were a buyer looking to buy houses and pay cash for houses and all these things that you guys do and a lot of these bandit signs and mailers and everything else. When they start dissecting all that stuff to find out exactly what was going on, what your intent was, that's when you got a problem. All right. That's when you have a major, major, major problem. And that's where when you document this stuff like these people do, repeatedly in these rah-rah sessions, you're putting yourself in a tremendous amount of jeopardy, whether you realize it or not. And that's a very bad situation to be in. Okay, if you've never been sued, and I have, it's not a pleasant experience. Okay, if you've never been arrested, and I have, it's not a pleasant experience. And just because your buddies are doing it, just because you got some other people out there that are doing the exact same thing that haven't been caught yet, doesn't mean it's legal. Okay, so you've got to make up your own mind and your own decisions on how you're going to conduct business and whether you want to do things ethically, legally, morally, and non-fraudulently, or if you want to stay with the herd and do it the wrong way, because these are the guys that are going to get hit first. And when they do, states are already trying to crack down on a lot of the stuff. And, you're not thinking about the long game here. What's going to happen in the whole real estate investor, no money down, contract assignments and flipping and all this stuff is they're going to eventually outlaw it. Even though it's not constitutional, they're going to eventually do that and require licensing. And then when they do these types of things, just like they did with predatory lending, guess what happens? The margins go to hell. And so you end up killing the golden goose because you refuse to get educated and study and practice to be able to do things correctly, legally, and ethically. But you have to make up your mind how you want to do your own business, okay? My job here today is to simply provide you with accurate information, not to tear anybody down. The situation with Tom, like I said, was brought to me by other people. He's not even on my radar, couldn't care less as far as he's concerned. But with him, the issue is that I've told him personally over and over again what he was doing that was incorrect and illegal and fraudulent. Doesn't care, just kept on doing it. And in fact, we told him about what's called equitable interest. And if you don't know what that means, you need to understand what that means. Equitable interest and how he was teaching people to illegally broker without a license. Didn't care, didn't stop him up until the point in time that the attorney for the National Real Estate Investor Association did the video with the Ohio Department of Real Estate confirming exactly what I had been telling him. And then all of a sudden the story changed and he started correcting it because now he had been busted openly in a public forum for doing exactly what I told him was illegal. And you're going to get to hear his own student say that's when he changed his tune on what he was teaching people. You'll get to hear it here in just a minute. So nonetheless, I hope this is beneficial to you guys so you can at least start doing your own due diligence. Do not rely on anything that anybody tells you, even me. Always vet everything. That is the critical foundation for real estate investors is you must do your own due diligence and validate everything that you're being told. You never rely on anybody that tells you anything. If somebody says something is the law, is against the law, whatever, always make them proof up with the statute, the code, the regulation, the whatever it is, so that you understand that what you're being told is correct. That's one of the biggest problems with these Facebook groups and everything else is there's a bazillion people out there providing all types of advice as if it were gospel and fact and legal, and when in fact it isn't. They just don't know any better, but they proffer that advice as if they were the Messiah, and it's not correct. You've got to do your own due diligence and validate everything.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
This is the Virtual Real Estate Investor Podcast with Vincent Polisi. Buckle your seatbelt and prepare to learn how to legally make six figures investing in real estate with no money, no credit check, and nothing but a computer and internet connection. Learn how you too can begin generating buyers and sellers for free today, and why you're only 2 calls away from making a $10,000 or more payday while never leaving the comfort of your home. And now, your host, the virtual real estate investor, Vincent Polisi.
All right, guys, here we go. Wow, what a fireball yesterday's episode was. It is unbelievable the number of downloads and how viral that episode went so quickly, and it has totally polarized people. It's very, very easy to see where people lie when they listen to something like that. It's going to be even more interesting to see what happens after today, after they actually hear that everything that I said is 100% correct and accurate, and they get to hear it from Tom's number one student. Okay, so episode 2 of 3. Today's episode is a phone call from a gentleman by the name of Theo Davis. Theo reached out to me after listening to some of the other podcasts where I defined exactly what was being taught that was completely fraudulent and illegal, and as you will hear, confirms repeatedly that everything that I indicated is 100% correct, and that Tom is, in fact, teaching false advertising, teaching bait and switch, teaching fraud in the inducement, teaching fraud in the factum, teaching mail fraud, and you're going to get to hear it live. You don't have to take my word for it. Here it comes.
Breaking the law, breaking the law. Let's burn something.
And now, without further delay, it's unquestionably everyone's favorite segment of the Virtual Real Estate Investor Podcast with Vincent Polisi. It's time for an extra large dose of total transparency. As you listen to Vincent live and in the trenches.
Hey, Theo.
Theo, what's happening, man? This is Vincent.
Hey, Vincent. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well also.
Did I catch you at a good time?
You did. Yeah, I'm just cleaning up here a little, about to head to the office and try to get started today.
No trying, man. Like Yoda says, try not. Do or do not. There is no try.
Try not, do or do not. I like that.
Got to live by it, man.
Absolutely.
So that was a great question
Absolutely.
that you had. Yeah, that was a great question that you had. And I was actually going to utilize that as the next podcast because it's a fantastic question, and I've got a great answer for it because I'm guessing that a lot of people that heard the last couple of podcasts are like, well, wonderful. Now I've got thousands of dollars worth of bandit signs and yellow letters and lists and all this stuff. And what am I going to do with it? Because it says that I'm a buyer, and I'm now realizing that I'm not. And there's a very easy, effective, and legal way to handle all of that, which I can cover in the podcast.
Man, that would be,
yeah,
that would be awesome. That would be awesome. And just to give you a little of my backstory, I don't know how much time you have, but I kind of can give you the Reader's Digest version. I got in wholesaling about 2 years ago, and listened to all of the Sean Terry's. Well, my specific mentors were I don't know if you know these guys, but Tom Krol and Todd Toback.
Oh God.
Yeah. And so they showed me, Todd is running a 7-figure a year wholesale business, and he taught his brother Tom, and Tom is on his way to 7 figures. So I kind of attached to that train, and they showed me how to do it, how to set up marketing pieces, and but I always had a reluctance on some things. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I was taught to do what's called ghost ads. And what ghost, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with those. What ghost ads are, I put on Craigslist that I have a house for sale, and I put a price there, but I don't have that house. I'm just soliciting buyers. And that didn't sit well with me because, that's fraud again.
It's false advertising. Who told you to do that?
Well, that was one of our mentor in Tom Krol's program. So,
well, let me help you out here with Tom Krol, so you understand something, okay? And I'm only bringing this up because you did. He was a landscaper like a year and a half ago. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Right.
Okay. And not that there's anything wrong with landscaping. I did it myself when I was 13 years old, and I needed a summer job and all that. And it's a honest way to make a living, but that was his full-time job somewhere between 18 and 24 months ago. And
right.
shortly thereafter, after quitting that, I think it was within probably, 4, 5, 6 months. And I'm not clear on all the dates because I don't follow these guys because they don't know what they're doing. All of a sudden, he's now calling himself America's #1 wholesale coach, which is an absolute comedy. Okay. Somebody sent me, there's some stuff that's going on right now on the backside of this. I alluded to it the other day in a post where, people, because of where I'm at in iTunes and because I just don't care. I don't have any issue with vetting the fraud with these guys. I'll blast all of them and give them the opportunity to prove otherwise, but I don't have to because what they're doing now is there's a coalition right now that's going after the state of Florida to get them to go after Tom Krol for what it is that he is doing and teaching. And they have been putting together all of the documentation in video and audio of him. And they've sent me some of this stuff already. And he's teaching absolute fraud. There's no other way to say it. Illegally brokering without a license, this thing with the ghost ads, it's false advertising. It's fraud. It's totally fraud. Why do you need to do that? Why can't you do it the right way?
Right.
See, that's the undercurrent in this quote unquote, and I'm going to use the air quotes again, the wholesaling guru coaching mentorship, whatever it is. They're going to teach you all of these things that are not legal. And people do it because, hey, everybody else is doing it and we're making money, right? And it's all fun and games until, the red and blue lights show up and they give you the silver bracelets and put you in a cage. Then it's not too funny anymore.
Right.
Right. Listen, what's right and wrong. Okay. If you don't have a property and you're advertising that you do so you can generate leads, that's not right, man. It's just not. Okay. You're wasting people's time. You're wasting people's time. It's not. And it kills me that people go along with this stuff because somebody told them that that's how you do it. There's walking the fine line of, bending the law and all of that. And I get that, but outright blatant false advertising and teaching you to commit fraud and tell people that you're going to do things. And somebody sent me a copy of his contracts and they're an absolute abortion. It's just absolutely, I'm like, I can't even make sense of it. I'm not sure because there was one clause that said something about it's all cash and another one that says it's contingent upon financing. And I'm just like, I don't even understand what's supposedly going on here, right? And they put these clauses in there so that. And let me explain to you this thing here, okay? So this will make sense from a legal contractual perspective. There's absolutely nothing wrong when you go in on a purchase and sale agreement and leaving yourself an out if something doesn't pass the smell test. That's in every purchase and sale agreement there is. In other words, on a standard retail deal, if I'm going to go buy a house, there's going to be an inspection clause in the contract, right? And that inspection clause gives me a legitimate bona fide out if we find something like, okay, the foundation has cracked. There's mold in the basement. There's bats and, stuff in the attic, right? It gives me a legitimate bona fide. I'm not going into that contract looking for an excuse to get out if I can't do something else, because my intent is to purchase. What they teach you guys, though, is that go in, say you're a buyer, you're not, 9 times out of 10, you're not disclosing. And there's no reason not to disclose that. Why? I mean, most of the people that you're dealing with don't understand what it means anyway. But they're not telling you to disclose what your intent is up front, and that if you can't do that, then you're going to have to back up and punt and do something different, right? Right. And so what they do then is they take it, and it's like layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of fraud, so that you can get some poor guy that's down on his luck that needs cash, take his property off the market where he's losing marketing time, where he potentially could have sold it to somebody else, but he has taken it off the market now, and you're marketing the house. Mm-hmm. And if you don't come through, then, this guy can end up in foreclosure. He can end up in, God only knows whatever his situation is. And that's not right. Right. Okay. Right. And so they teach you to put in these clauses that supposedly give you a legitimate out, but it's always nonsense. Like, you know what? I tell you what, grab one of your contracts and read it to me. What does yours say? The one that you're using. It'll say something like, subject to, third party so-and-so approval. And there is no defined third party. Right? There's no defined third party. Okay. So it's nonsense. And then what are you supposed to do? Okay. I can't find somebody to assign the contract to. So now I'm going to go lie once again. Right? Because that's what I'm going to do, because there's no third party. Right? And I'm going to say, well, hey, my so-and-so, didn't approve of the property. Right. Another lie. Right. Another, commission of fraud. And for what? Right. I mean, the problem is, and I'll tell you this, and I saw this in the mortgage lending industry before, what these guys don't understand is the long game. I did a post on this yesterday. They don't understand the long game. They don't understand what they're doing right now, okay? Because of the illegal tactics that they're using, the fact that they're out there teaching people to commit fraud, to falsely advertise, to do all this stuff. That's the reason that the Ohio Department of Real Estate is coming down and cracking down on this stuff. And let me tell you something, it's a domino effect. Same thing happened with predatory lending. Back in, I don't know how old you are, but that was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? And they're going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, to the point that the federal government or the state governments come in and they lock the entire thing down so you can't do it anymore. Right. And I'm just telling you, that's what's going to happen. They're going to require licensing, and they're going to kill the spreads that you can make on these things, because the government is going to get involved. They're already getting involved. You saw it. If you saw those videos that they put up with the attorney for the National Association the National Real Estate Investors Association with the Ohio Department of Real Estate. Yeah, if you haven't seen that. Yeah, I saw all of those. Okay, what do you think sparked all that? And you heard what they said. Absolute hope. Yeah. Right. You heard what they said. It's about what's the intent? What's the intent? Right. Right. And that was the big thing. They kept harping on absolutely everything you were saying in your podcast. Number one, what was intent? And number two, you do not market houses. I mean, that's illegal. You're brokering real estate as a realtor. If you're marketing houses, you market your contract. And he asked everybody on the panel. He said, so if I market the contract and not the house, you're okay with that? And they said, absolutely. And I mean, that's the legitimate contractual assignment. And I mean, I'm with you. All you have to do is take a step back, and figure out how to do it the right way. And, that's why I was so drawn to your podcast, and, how your language was lining up with everything that they were saying, so. Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you for saying that. And here's the thing, and let me explain this to you. There's nothing, as long as something is not illegal, you can contract for anything. Okay. I had the attorney that prepared the contracts that I use back in late 2008, early 2009, told me that. He says, listen, we can contract for anything that's illegal. We can't contract to buy and sell cocaine, but we can contract for anything that is legal. Okay. So you can absolutely put in your contract that there is conveyance of equitable interest in the property at the point of execution of that agreement, so that you do have equitable interest in the property and the contract and can market the property. Okay. You can also do things like get a specific and limited power of attorney that provides you that same legal ability. So you have the get out of jail free card if anybody comes in and wants to say anything. There's any number of ways. Listen, there's any number of ways to skin this cat and do it legally and transparently, so that everybody knows what's going on. And if anybody cries wolf, you've got the get out of jail free card. Say, hey, look, here's what it says. This is what we agreed to. This is what my intent was. Fully disclosed up front. And if you listen to yesterday's podcast, it puts you in a position now with the ammunition to disclose to prospective sellers what your quote unquote competition is doing, so that, let's assume you're going to go in and you go out and see a property and you're going to contract on the property, and the guy comes back and says, well, so-and-so has offered me X, which is higher than yours, or it's whatever. And it gives you the ability then to have that conversation with the seller and say, Mr. Seller, I understand exactly how you feel. Many of our other sellers have felt exactly the same way, but once I explained to them what was going on, what they found was that the contract that they had was completely worthless because it was completely filled with fraud. The person that indicated they were coming in to buy the property had no intention or ability to buy the property. They hadn't provided proof of funds indicating that they had an ability to close. They hadn't provided proof of financing indicating that they had the ability to close. And all they were simply trying to do was get the seller to take his property off the market so they could daisy chain it on the internet, blast it out to list, and find somebody that they could potentially assign it to, while the seller was losing valuable marketing time that he needed to get the cash out, get out from underneath the liens, or whatever his situation was. So, Mr. Seller, I'm being honest with you and telling you what I'm going to do right now up front. And if you feel like this other contract is better because they're offering a different and better price, as a professional real estate investor, my advice to you would be to absolutely take the higher price if the other terms are better as well. But with one caveat: make sure you're not shooting yourself in the foot by wasting time dealing with somebody who's playing you for a fool, that can't proof up that they have the cash and they can't proof up that they have the ability to close with financing, and then shut up. What is he going to say? I mean, so if maybe you don't get the contract signed right then because he feels like he's got this other potentially better contract, or maybe he has the contract already. I don't know, but I'm just trying to give you an example of how the whole thing would go down if you submitted an offer and yours was less and he wasn't going to take it because somebody else was offering more. If somebody's going to legitimately offer him more and they have an ability to close, then that's the better deal for him. I mean, it is the way it is. Okay. And you move on to the next one. But as you know, I'm sure you're bumping elbows with your buddies out there all the time, right?
Right. And it doesn't happen a lot because, I'm in a smaller market and nobody is marketing as hard as I am. But when I do, it absolutely happens. It's another wholesaler, and, and so, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it wouldn't happen as much as, these other guys in the more competitive markets, but it's happening here.
Well, and I just showed you the way to be able to do it without, ever losing anything again, because the first thing that the guy's going to do, and I'd even have him do it right then and there with me. I say, okay, I tell you what, let's call the other buyer right now and ask him if he can provide you proof of funds to close and or mortgage pre-approval. Or it's not even really worth the paper it's printed on, but just to kind of call the bluff, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Ask him if he has that.
What do you think about earnest money? You asking him to put up $1,000, because most of these newbie wholesalers, they're going to balk at that because they don't have any money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great way to
proof it. You think the proof of funds is a lot stronger though than just earnest money?
Well, you should have earnest money down anyway. You need good and valuable consideration to bind the contract legally anyway. And I don't want to speak for you because I haven't taken these other courses, but my understanding is what they tell you to do, and I've seen this in some of Tom Krol stuff and whatever, but they are telling you to put in that the earnest money is going to go to the title company 10 days after execution of the contract or something like that. With the sole which is nonsense. Okay, I'm gonna tell you that right now, it's nonsense. With the sole purpose of providing you that 10-day window to get the contract assigned, so that you don't actually have to put the cash up, or if you do have to put the cash up, it's because you've got a contract assignment already lined up, and you know you're going to close.
Right.
And if that doesn't happen, this is where they kick in the little weasel clause, and my third party, whatever it is, didn't approve of it, so we're going to pass, right? It's nonsense, man. I mean, it's a circus, and it's not necessary. I mean,
yeah, and I love what you're saying. I mean, it's absolutely spot on, and like I was telling you, I had a problem with the ghost ads, and another thing I had a problem with was the weasel clauses. And so this is what I used to do. I used to always put up $100, and if I couldn't move the property, I tell them, my earnest money is full liquidated damages. But I see now that that's not even enough. Like, even in my marketing, that is what you call like fraud and inducement, because at the point in time, I literally couldn't buy the house. I just had a ton of cash buyers who could. But now I'm in the position to be able to buy them and assign contracts. So, I mean, it may be a little different because my intent is a lot different now, but I'm just thinking about like starting off a year ago. I mean, my intent was absolutely to assign that contract and not to buy the house, So
right. Well, and you know what? And the thing is that you can still do all of that and do it legally. And let me ask you this: do you think for a second, if you told somebody, Mr. Seller, I'm a professional real estate investor, and I do joint venture deals and do the sweat equity work for a consortium of investors that I work with that are cash buyers, and your property matches what they're looking for, and I'd like to be able to legally present it to them. But in order to do that, I have to have a legal and binding contract. And so I'm letting you know up front that I'm not the buyer, right? My sole intent is to assign this contract to one of my, cash investors that can and will close. And I mean, again, right? If he doesn't have a contract, if he doesn't have a contract already, why is he not going to take that? And like I said, if you listened to yesterday, you can put the kick-out clause in there.
Right.
I mean,
he absolutely will take that every time because, I mean, like you said in your podcast, he's starting at nothing. I mean, you're improving upon his current situation. So, yeah, I absolutely agree.
And you can just do it honestly. I mean, here's the thing, man.
Right.
And this is a little generic, but I'm going to tell you, nobody's doing it that way. Nobody's telling the truth. That's because they're listening to all these clowns that are showing these courses with all this fraud in it.
Right.
I mean, you have an ability right now. This is why I try to elicit to people. You have an ability right now to completely stand out from the rest and elevate yourself above everybody else and completely destroy any perceived competition by doing it the right way. Okay? Because you're going to have all the ammunition because you're telling the truth. You're totally transparent. There's no funny business with all these stupid, and again, like I said from the very beginning, there's nothing illegitimate about a legitimate out if there's a problem. It's only when you're putting these clauses in there to get out fraudulently because you aren't able to do what you think you can do. So let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. Talk about a standard purchase contract where there's going to be mortgage financing involved, right? There would normally be a financing contingency clause in there, right? But the intent is to close.
Right.
The intent is to close. I want to close, but hey, if I can't close, I don't want to lose my $5,000 down. Or if I can't close because I can't get the financing, I don't want to lose my $5,000 down. Okay. You know what I mean? Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Nothing wrong with that at all. And last house I built, I've always done no money down, 100% financing on every deal I've ever done. but it was a new construction property. And in order for the builder to do all the custom work that I wanted, he wanted some skin in the game. So for all the customizations, I had to put up 50%, and I think it was 50% cash down or something. Anyway, so I ended up with like $25,000 out of pocket because we had California closets and all kinds of crazy stuff put in the house. But I got it all back at closing, right? But I also had the financing contingency in there so that in the event that anything happened, I had an ability to, that was through no fault of my own because I wanted to close. That was the whole purpose, that I had the ability to get my funds back, right? I mean, he still retained the possession of the property and all that. And so there's nothing wrong with a legitimate contingency, a legitimate inspection clause, a legitimate, depending on how things are set up, a legitimate way out.
Right.
If something doesn't go the way that it's supposed to, but not because you're not able to secure an assignee.
Right. Okay.
Let me here. Hold on. Let me say it a different way. And it could even legally be structured so that that's not even true. Okay. So that if it's disclosed properly, that yes, you have an out if you can't find the assignee. There's a legal way to do that also. But what's not cool, what's not okay, is the lying about the third party not approving it.
Right.
That makes sense. Okay. I mean, if you disclose, hey, listen, the whole sole purpose here is for me to sign this contract. Got, consortium of investors I work with, blah, blah, blah. And if I'm not able to assign it to them, then, it's a general mutual release and everybody goes around about their way and that's it. And you can get you put the kick out clause in if that's their concern. I mean, it's so easy to do it the right way. Okay. Which is why I can't figure out why these guys need to lie. But I'll tell you something, man. I had this guy that worked for me years ago and in sales, and fantastic salesperson. I mean, just absolutely fantastic salesperson. But the problem is I end up dealing with more stuff with his clients of things that he had told them that were not true, when the truth was actually better than what he told them. And I would ask him, I'm like, what are you doing? Why did you tell them that? And basically what I got was the story of the frog and the scorpion. You familiar with that story?
I've never heard it, but I'm getting the concept, but yeah.
All right. So here's a story real quick. There's a frog and a scorpion sitting on the riverbank, and the scorpion says, hey, can you take me to the other side of the riverbank? And the frog says, no, if I give you a ride on my back, you'll sting me. And the scorpion says, no, I won't. Why would I do that? We would both die because I can't swim. So he says, okay, hop on. And they get halfway across the river, and all of a sudden the frog feels this big stinger in his back. He says, what have you done? You've killed us both. And the scorpion says, I can't help it. It's my nature, right? And there are some people that just have a need to be dishonest when honesty is easier and would serve them better.
Wow.
Okay? So you got to watch out for these guys, all right?
That is really good. As a matter of fact, my sales guy, I had to kind of correct him on, we were listening to Claude Diamond, his sales training.
Yeah.
And in one of his sales trainings, he says that anytime you have a seller dealing with an issue, let's say, they have two mortgages. Well, you create a third, I think he called it a third party story. Well, yeah, I knew a guy that once had two mortgages and, it was going all crazy for him and he wasn't able to keep up with both of them. Well, it's a complete lie. And I was telling my sales guy, don't do that. Just tell him, I understand you have two mortgages. I want to help you with your problem. Like, the truth is actually better. You don't have to make up this, nebulous third party story just for the sake of trying to get a contract when you could have got it anyway. Like, he's in front of us because he wants to do business with us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're doing it's part of the sales process. They're making an effort to build rapport through a connection, but the problem is that it's illegitimate and it's all based on fraud. And there's no reason for that.
Right. Yeah. So this is really good stuff. So I'm going to go and revamp my entire business correct my marketing pieces, correct my contracts, and just do it the right way, And by God's grace, I was able to, like I was telling you, make hundreds of thousands in this business. But I did it with the previous method, and I want to correct that, and do it the right way. That was my whole purpose the entire time. So, it's just such a blessing to be able to, I guess I would say, stumble upon you, No,
I appreciate that. It's, it just, I have to be honest with you. Obviously, like everybody else, I want to make as much money as I can. It's truly heartbreaking to see the tripe that is just peddled out there to unsuspecting people, to jeopardize them and get them engaged in this slippery slope of committing fraud and lying. And
right.
The problem is it's like it's the gateway drug, man. I'm just going to tell you that. What happens is they get you going, and okay, well, you got to fake a bogus contract, and you got these clauses, and you're falsely advertising and lying to people, and then you make some money, and okay, well, here we go. So that wasn't so bad, and then you do it again and again and again and again. At the end of the day, your entire morality has completely shifted to the point that you're okay. You've justified in your mind the ability to, and you see it on Facebook all the time, these guys, man, they'll justify what they're doing left and right because, it was a good deal, right? Well, I understand that, and you made money, and it's wonderful. Okay, maybe the seller got out and all that, but the end does not justify the means. Okay, just because that one deal, you don't ever hear about them talking about the bad deals and everything else, but and people do this stuff. Like if you've ever been to a car dealership, right? Here's what people have a tendency of doing. You can take the most solid, upright Christian person there is, who would never tell a lie, right? Voluntarily. And they get on a car dealership lot, and the guy's talking to them, trying to help them, and now they're holding their cards close to the vest, and they start lying, and they start not disclosing, and it's all justified because they believe that the car salesman is going to be lying to them, right? So they do the exact behavior, whether he's lied to them or not, they do the exact behavior that they're afraid of, that they condemn.
Right.
If that makes any sense. And they justify it in their mind because somebody else is going to do it to them, right? And you got to watch this stuff, man, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. The way these things tend to go down, the state is going to pick one of these big guys, that's out there running his mouth about all the money he's making and everything else, and they're going to make an example out of him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then it's just like the mafia, man. They're going to go after the head guy, and then here comes the trickle down effect. And then they're going to go after the capos, and then they're going to go after the bookies, and they're going to go after the couriers, and they're going to go after everything. They're going to go after all of these people that are involved, that are out there actively participating. And you want to be head and shoulders elevated above what everybody else is doing. Let me just tell you something. You never want to do what the herd is doing. Okay, because the herd are followers. Right?
Got you.
So,
right.
And here's the thing. This is the bad part. When the newbies get involved in this stuff, especially when they start making money, pardon me, they never do any due diligence. They just take some guy's word for it. Okay, what's his claim to fame? He says he makes money. Says he makes money. I mean, how hard is it to get on the internet and say you make money and show yourself with cars and mansions and everything else? Not hard at all.
Right. Not at all.
Mm-mm. That's why I do. That's why I do totally transparent calls. You want to hear a deal? You want to hear how things go down? Okay. You want to hear when things go bad? What happens? I mean, I put it all out there. Here it is. This is real life.
Right.
This is the way it is. Okay. I'm not telling you some theory about what works and go do it. And I'm not doing all of the stuff and telling you to go out there and fraudulently market because it's not necessary to do. That's why we set up the joint venture program so that guys that didn't have properties could access our inventory and legally market it through the joint venture agreement, as opposed to, I guess, what they call the ghost ads. I don't know who came up with that, but I mean, the entire concept of advertising something. I mean, get on the FTC's website. You know, the FTC is Federal Trade Commission. I mean, they have a hardcore stance against false advertising, right? Bait and switch.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing,
right?
With a ghost ad,
right? It's
illegal.
Yeah, and I never felt comfortable with that. That's why I never did it. And it's another thing where you have a sign that says like desperate must sell, and it's like you're getting people to prey up on, because you have a contract and you know people are going to try to call that number to prey up on you because they feel like they can get a good deal.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I feel like it's really inducing people. Why not just put house for sale, must sell, instead of putting the desperate on there? So I didn't feel right about doing the desperate.
Yeah, that stuff's been around for decades, man. That the whole it's and I'll tell you, it works. It works very well because the human brain, unfortunately, craves taking advantage of somebody else's misfortune, and that's why it works so well.
Got you.
I mean, I was taught all that crap back in the 90s, and I'm just like, come on.
Right.
You run all those ads doing all that stuff.
Right. So, man, this is really good. So I'll be on the lookout for your podcast. And I wanted to ask you this, to get my contracts and my marketing more legitimate. I know some immediate changes I can make. Do you recommend me meet with my attorney to help me with some of these clauses, or do you have a contract that you would mind me looking over? I'm definitely willing to purchase it, whatever,
Yeah, we're gonna.
Price
I don't know if you listen to. Yeah, if you listen to the last part of the last call or the last podcast, I'm gonna go ahead and we're gonna do a deep dive into the whole thing on how to set the contracts up the right way. I'm gonna go through actually, how to handle all of any potential objections with the buyer and the seller. And I say buyer, the contract assignee and the seller, if they balk, so you can start getting paid at the time of the assignment as opposed to having to wait for a closing. Because
goodness, that was awesome when you interjected that. I couldn't believe it. I mean, and then I was like, how are you going to get that to happen? Then a few moments later you said, whose responsibility is it? It's the seller's. And then you said, well, if it's the seller's responsibility, just put fire under him and say, if you cannot, provide clear title, you will convey deed to buyer. And I mean, that solves it. I mean, that you can get your money up front every time with that clause,
Well, yeah. What's there to fight? What's the argument at that point?
Right. I mean, you don't have anything, Yeah. So.
No. Yeah. I mean, really and let me tell you something. There are guys that have made absolute fortunes by having deeds to properties with clouded titles that they can't sell, but they got control. That's all you really want is control. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and the problem that you run into with the course shiller guys is that they were not professional real estate investors as an actual business. What happened was they bought somebody's course, they started making money, and then they basically replicated it with their own branding and terminology and all that. And if you look at most of these contracts, they're an absolute disaster. I mean, they're just a disaster. That's why, and I don't know if you've seen or listened. I put the audio up for the webinar, but we had the hot seat webinars that we did, and I said, you know what? Hey, after we took Angelo Russo, who's a real estate attorney, to task on his contracts and how he was doing things. You actually get to hear him admit that he knows he puts clauses in the contracts that are in violation of state law. Okay, that's an attorney doing that. You can hear it from his own voice. You don't have to listen to me. When we did episode 2 of that, because I couldn't get Sean Terry or Chris Chico or any of the rest of these guys to come on to sit in the hot seat and go through their stuff, the attorney said to me, well, how about you? Why don't we cross-examine you? I said, fine. They grilled me for 2 hours, man. You can listen to the whole thing. I got the webinars on the website. You can actually see it, what we went through, clause by clause, line by line, the whole 9 yards, because I'm totally transparent. Here it is, okay? If I'm doing something wrong, I want to know, okay? I'm not sitting down at the reading every single new law that comes into effect. I mean, it's impossible, right? So if I'm doing something wrong, I certainly want to know it and get it corrected. But they took me to task for 2 hours, okay? and totally transparent. You're not going to see that with anybody else. Nobody else is going to do that because their stuff does not hold water because of all these things that I'm telling you.
Right.
And all of them have done is just continue to regurgitate the same crap that the other ones are doing. There's no difference.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And that is really good.
Yeah, you can do it the right way. But I don't know if you listen to the last thing, we're doing a deep dive into the whole thing, and I'm actually gonna I'm gonna get somebody. If you go to virtualrealestateinvestor.org/CADS, you can sign up for the webinar on that. And I'm actually going to get somebody to provide me their prospects of deals that they feel like they want to move forward with the contract on, and I'm going to put the contract together, and I'm going to deal with the seller, and we'll get it all recorded so that you can see proof of concept. And then when they have their assignees, I'm going to deal with all of them and get this thing done where the assignment fee is paid up front. Okay.
That's nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so when you market to your buyers, like you said, because I was making the argument that you have to market your contract, but you say that you can obtain equitable interest in a way where you can still legally market the house.
Yeah, my contracts specifically state that I'm getting equitable interest in the property. Okay. Okay. And they also go on to state that if any governmental agency deems that the contract terminology is insufficient to convey equitable interest in the property, that the seller agrees at the time he executed the agreement to help perfect the language via addendum to be in compliance with state law so that equitable interest is conveyed, so I'm not illegally brokering without a license. Totally transparent.
It's unbelievable.
I'm telling you, it's not hard, man. It's not hard.
Yeah. Man, I could tell that you do this for a living as opposed to like you didn't like take a training course and just started making money. Like you literally you engage in critical thinking and it's the same stuff, but you're doing it the right way. So it's just unbelievable.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. No, thankfully, I've only taken one real estate investing course. It's probably not a good thing, but I've only taken one in my entire life, and that was Carlton Sheets' No Money Down course back in 1990 or 91. And I don't get involved in all this. I do deals. So that's why we have the podcast up there. You can hear the deals being done. You can hear the money. You can hear it all go down. So,
right.
So not me telling you I'm making $2 million a year. It's, here, listen to this. So
right.
Anyway, it's much better to hear it from somebody else than from me. But there you have it. So yeah, if that's what you want to do, man, I would get signed up for that. I'm going to provide contracts. Now the thing with the contracts is that you can probably hear my daughter having a blast there. The thing with the contracts is you're going to need, I don't know what state you're in, but you're going to need to ensure, I would definitely, after you get the basic template, get with the real estate attorney, but follow my advice and make sure that the real estate attorney is a real estate litigator, okay? Not just a title attorney. There's a big difference. You need somebody that fights the stuff in court so that he knows what to watch out for. He knows the claims and the arguments that can be presented as a plaintiff or as a defense, if that makes any sense. So you got to do that. Make sure that's what he has, and then spend the money. Just what is he going to charge? $300? It's worth it to make sure that you have all the clauses necessary for your state, whatever state you're doing business in. Because I don't even know what state you're in, but I'm probably not an expert on the state laws. So, primarily, when I was in Georgia where I started the whole thing out. I've read the entire. It's called the OCGA, Official Code of Georgia, annotated as it relates to landlord-tenant law and sales and all that stuff. So I knew what that were, and of course in Florida I knew what that was because I used to edit I was the editor for one of only two continuing education courses for real estate salespeople back in the 90s. There was only 2 of them available back then. And I used to edit one of them, so I was very familiar with what the laws were. But yeah, I mean, you're in business, man. You're in business, okay? And you know, you take the extra step, and maybe he doesn't find anything else he can add, and you waste $300, or maybe he does find some things you add where you're not in compliance, and you spend $300, and then you sleep easier. You know,
right.
And you've heard this probably before on the podcast. I mean, nothing can stop anybody from suing you at any point in time. You know, regardless. So you can't really worry about all. You gotta, you know, do the very best that you can to get these things perfected. But there's no such thing as an ironclad contract. Not mine, not one from any attorney, nothing. There's no contract anywhere that is going to be ironclad. But what you do is you put enough layering upon layering upon layering in them to dissuade somebody from trying to prosecute you, okay? And in the event that they do, to make sure that you've got the get out of jail free cards built in. You know, now of course none of that works if you're committing. You need to understand this now. None of that works, and LLCs don't matter and all if you're committing fraud, which is what these guys are doing. Okay.
Right.
Because
and that's the part I need to correct first. You know, even with my marketing, and that's why I'm excited about this. So, is my position a little different than the other wholesalers now? Because I do buy houses now. You know, I do have a different intent now as opposed to initially. Would you say that I could kind of still use it, but just add that I do contract assignments as well? Or?
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, we're going to go into a deep. I'll answer your question on today's podcast, and then in the contract assignment domination system webinars and follow-ups and all that, everything is going to get answered backwards and forwards.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're actually buying, I mean, you can have a generic contract that if you're actually buying properties and have the ability to do that and say, you know, and then have a clause in there that says that, you know, I may close on this myself or I may assign this, you know.
Right.
Depending on the situation. Okay. So nothing wrong with that, nothing illegal with that as long as it's disclosed up front.
Okay. Got you.
Okay. Because there may be, you know, legitimately there may be properties that you want to close on, but somebody comes and offers you something more and you say, hey, I can make a quick 10, 15, 20 grand and I don't have to rehab it or I don't have to whatever, you know, and you want to assign it, get your cash and move on to the next deal. That, I mean, it's legitimate. That can happen.
Right. And this has been very helpful. And I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time out to answer these questions and help me. But because, you know, I'm a go-getter, as you can tell, you know, with making money in the business, but I always want to do it the right way, just like you. And so I'm going to correct all of this. And the funny thing about it is correcting it, like you said, is going to put me in a position to stand out from the herd and completely dominate the market. So I'm excited about it. So hopefully a year.
Unless they're doing what you're doing, okay? Or what you're going to be doing is what I mean. Okay, unless they're doing it, unless they're doing it the right way, you're gonna. I mean, they can't hold a candle to you because they can't compete because they're committing fraud, and they're going to get called out. And they need to be. They need to be. You know, and that's what'll end up happening. You know, is this thing if this gets any kind of traction, and you start doing it the right way, and then you're kicking somebody's butt there wherever you're at. And then they realize, okay, they can't compete with that. So now they got to start doing it the right way. And then little by little, we have the opportunity to domino effect and improve the industry as a whole and just eradicate all the nonsense. And I can't, you know, guys telling you to fraudulently advertise, guys telling you to lie, guys telling you to put clauses in contracts where, you know, I mean, it's unbelievable that these guys are out there and are allowed to continue doing that stuff.
Right, man. This is good. And I talked to another guy, and because I remember your name in the past, because you know you would always get into it with people on Alex Youngblood's website, and they would be so upset because they were, you know, wanting to do it the typical way, and they say there's nothing wrong with this. I have equitable interest. And, you know, they can have equitable interest, but you can't build equitable interest off of fraud, like you're saying. And so they would literally blast you and hate you. I remember one guy was trying to get you kicked out of the group. I don't know if they actually succeeded with that or not, but.
Oh yeah, I've been kicked out twice.
Wow, that is unbelievable. So,
yeah, they can't hang with the truth, man, because what you have is you got a merry band of people in there that are committing fraud, and they don't want to be exposed as committing fraud, and so they justify everything that they're doing because they've got 40 other people that'll then jump on the thread and character assassinate me and anybody else that comes in to try to tell them the truth.
Wow, that is great. So I'm really excited because I've talked to another guy. I think you may know him. His name is Bill. I think it's Bill like Walton or Walston.
Yeah,
or
Bill
like
Walston.
That.
Yep.
And he's going to help me with some of my tax strategies. He says, he's really good in that area, so I'm going to kind of spend some time with him. And do you know much about him? Is he really gifted in that area?
Oh yeah, well he's been on some of the webinars that we've done. He and I communicate almost daily. He's razor sharp. Yeah, razor sharp and rock solid. When I needed some, I've come to him a couple times on guidance on trust documents because he's much more skilled at that and how everything needs to be set up correctly than I am, because he does a lot more of the trust than I do. But razor sharp. I couldn't. Okay. Nothing bad. You're not going to find anything in his game that's not right on the money. I've been dealing with for 2 years. I've never once seen him say anything that wasn't legitimate, that couldn't be backed up factually and legally.
That is awesome. I'm really excited about this. So, you've gained a new follower, so I definitely will be following. I'm about to leave you a review right now, and I appreciate everything.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. I hope that helps you, man.
Helps me tremendously.
So let me know if there's anything else I can do to help you, but I appreciate the review and your commentary here. It's been fantastic and upsetting at the same time, just because so frustrating, because you're out there. You sound like you got a religious background, so I'm sure you'll appreciate the, was it a metaphor, I guess? It's like, you're out there alone in the world trying to teach the truth, and they want to crucify you.
Right. And here's the sad thing, everybody professes faith. John Terry says he's a Christian. All these wholesalers say that they are Christians and believe in God, but at the same token, you will know them by their fruit. You can't, be a nominal Christian and then completely commit fraud like you're saying. So, I'm the type of person, I want my actions to justify my title. So, but, like you said, I do have a religious background, and, Jesus says that many shall say, that I know you, and he'll say, depart from me, I never knew you. And that's exactly what goes on. People put that title next to their name, but they just do it to, get a new ride in your fan base and, bring in Christians. You know what I mean? Because
let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you this, okay? And without getting in here, let me go check on my daughter. Let me call you back in just a minute if I can, please. I'm going to call you right back.
Okay, no problem.
All right, so there you have it, exactly as I said. There it is, firsthand. There's another follow-up phone call after this that we'll post as tomorrow's episode because it gets even better.
Thank you for listening to the Virtual Real Estate Investor Podcast with Vincent Polisi. If you found any value in this podcast, please use our Give to Get method and take a moment to give us a 5-star rating in iTunes and your favorite podcast service so we can keep giving you excellent episodes of real content you can use to profit today.